wildfire is a major focus, but there are other topics to discuss, especially the cost of housing.
All right, please remember to mute yourselves. I hear an echo, which suggests that not everybody is muted. We've been doing this regularly since COVID. There's no reason why you guys should be logging on unmuted with your videos on. All right. Hi there. Good evening. My name is Agata Gutkowska, and I currently work with the Territory's Emergency Management Organization, and I will be moderating today's press conference. Once again, if you're not on our panel, please remember to keep your cameras off and your mics muted until it is your turn to ask a question. And once again, like yesterday, I am going to throw a list of our commonly used acronyms into the chat because you will most likely be hearing our speakers using them, and I don't want you guys to get lost. So I'm going to throw that in there right now. Okay, there you are. Okay. So today we will start with remarks from Jennifer Young, Information Officer for the Territory's Emergency Management Organization, and then Mike Westwick, Information Officer for Environment and Climate Change, will provide a fire update. Then we will move straight to the media QA period. And like yesterday, I am going to be prioritizing northern media outlets because residents are reading and listening to your updates, yeah, I just want to give you guys that opportunity first. And after N.W.T outlets get their 2 questions, I will then turn it over to Southern Media. So today on the panel, we will have Jennifer Young, Emergency Management Organization Information Officer for the Department of Municipal and Community Affairs, Bobby Burke, South Slave Regional Emergency Management Organization, Mike Westwick, Wildfire Information Officer for the Department of Environment and Climate Change, John McDonald, Deputy Minister for Education, Culture and Employment, Kimberly Rowles, CEO of the Northwest Territories Health and Social Services Authority, William McKay, Deputy Minister for the Department of Finance, Mandy Bolstad, Assistant Deputy Minister, Solicitor General for the Department of Justice, Corporal Matt Halstead, RCMP, Jeffrey Edison, Acting Assistant Deputy Minister, Regional Operations for the Department of Infrastructure, Imran Khan, CFO for Northwest Tel, Corey Strang, CEO and President of NTPC, and City of Yellowknife Representative Sheila Bassi-Kellett, City Manager. So I am now going to paste these names and titles into the chat so you guys have them on hand. There you are. All right. So with that, I will turn it over to Jennifer Young to make opening remarks.
Thank you, Aggie. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for watching. As of noon today, 15 more people were evacuated to Winnipeg. This makes the total population evacuated across the North Slave, South Slave, and Daycho regions approximately 25,900, or 68% of the Northwest Territories population. Evacuees remain in hosting communities all across Western Canada, where our provincial and territorial partners have established evacuation centres in Whitehorse, Alberta, and Winnipeg. We also have an evacuation centre established in Fort Simpson. Today, our territorial response was focused on the situation in the South Slave, particularly around Fort Smith. We are preparing for some difficult days ahead dealing with the Wood Buffalo complex that is now less than 5 kilometers from the town of Fort Smith. Mike will provide a more detailed update on the status of the wildfire in that area. We are monitoring the situation very closely and will evacuate the essential workers remaining in Fort Smith, approximately 30 people at this point, when it is no longer safe for them to work in the community. We are hearing that people are planning to or have begun returning to Fort Smith and area. Residents need to know that you will be stopped at established checkpoints and asked to verify that you are an essential worker of an evacuated community before you are let through. Traveling towards evacuated communities makes fighting the wildfire more difficult because water bombers, helicopters, and firefighters need to stop what they're doing if vehicles are coming through. You put yourself and firefighters at risk by coming back and hurts our efforts to save your homes and other structures. We know you are concerned about financial supports during this difficult time. I can let you know that the Evacuee Income Disruption Support Program was open to allow residents evacuated from Hay River and Katludichi First Nation to apply as of today. As noted yesterday, this program provides financial support to adults 17 and over whose employment has been disrupted by an evacuation lasting more than 7 days. Eligible residents will receive a one-time payment of $750. In addition to disruptions to your personal life, the evacuations have had an impact on the delivery of Government of the Northwest Territories programs and services. I can provide the following updates on some of these impacts. Many schools in the N.W.T were scheduled to open to staff and teachers starting the week of August 21st, and for students the week of August 28th. With evacuation alerts and orders in place, there are likely to be changes made to school calendars and in some instances, a delayed start to the school year. Superintendents are working closely with their district education authorities and education leaders to make these decisions as the situation evolves in their communities. Student Financial Assistance Program applications and payments continue to be processed for those post-secondary students entering the fall semester. The Early Childhood Program Operating Subsidy and the Child Care Fee Reduction Subsidy will continue to be provided to licensed early learning and childcare programs that have had to close in evacuated communities and for children who would have otherwise been attending the programming. Housing N.W.T clients in public housing within communities that have been evacuated will have their rent prorated, and there will be no late fees applied to evacuees. When it is safe to come home, district offices and local housing organizations will work with evacuees to help support their return. In many cases, government and agency staff are working remotely to continue delivering programs and services critical to your needs. We ask for everyone's patience as there will be inevitable delays in this transition. The safety of the Northwest Territories residents is our #1 priority, and the risk in evacuated communities remains high. The small amount of rain we have received over the past couple of days has not stopped these fires. We know that not knowing when you will be able to go home is stressful, frustrating, and at times angering, but it is not safe to return to any evacuated community in the Northwest Territories at this time. We know that people want to return home as soon as it is safe to do so, and that is what we are tirelessly working towards. I'm going to close by reminding people not to believe everything they read on Facebook. Rumors are spreading. You can trust that the information about the fires and the N.W.T's response found on the GNWT's public safety page is accurate and as up to date as possible. There is information about all of the items I have discussed here today on this page, and it should be the first place residents go to find up-to-date and accurate answers to their questions. You can go to that website by visiting www.gov.nt.ca/public safety. Thank you. Now over to Mike for a wildfire update.
Thanks, Jennifer, and good evening, everyone. Some updates from today. We'll start south and work our way up. In Fort Smith, the fire remains about 4 kilometers away from the community at its closest point. This fire has been active over the last 24 hours, especially in the south there, driven by 25 to 26 degree temperatures and southwest winds. On the ground, we've seen fire burning so deep through the root systems that trees appear effectively suspended above the ground. And that kind of deep burning is driven by the severe drought in the area, and it's emblematic of the severe conditions which have caused these fires to be so challenging to fight. The Unified Command there is preparing for some extremely difficult days ahead, with rising temperatures, falling moisture in the air, and significant fire activity alongside challenging winds from the west and southwest, which could push fire towards the community once again and cause very unsafe conditions for anyone in its midst. But they've taken the right steps to prepare. A dozer crew worked overnight again on the south side of Highway 5 between Tabacha Road and Bell Rock to tightline the fire. Tightlining is where you take heavy equipment or other tools right at the perimeter of the fire and work to dig away fuel that could encourage its growth. Today, crews have been focused on completing the continuous control line using mechanical guards, sprinkler lines, and natural features like water bodies, for example, that runs south of Highway 5 from Salt River all the way to Fort Fitzgerald. Structural protection teams have worked on setting up protection on all values at risk between Salt River and Fort Fitzgerald, and the town of Fort Smith has done incredible work setting up protections in that community, high volume water systems, sprinklers. It's a huge operation. The team will continue to look for opportunities to gently bring that fire to natural fire break features with planned ignitions. This kind of work is a really important tool when you're battling big fires like this. In Hay River and the Kathodeche First Nation, Kikiza and Enterprise, there's challenging days ahead as well. This fire remains about 8 kilometers south of the town of Hay River, 10 kilometers away from the homes at Katladeche First Nation, and about 14 kilometers away from Kikiza for now. We saw flare-ups near Heart Lake and significant fire activity at the southeast corner, causing a lot of smoke. Hot, dry weather is expected to continue tomorrow, with winds near Hay River expected to be north to northeast, which could cause growth to the west and additional fire growth to the south. We're concerned by the incoming weather over the next few days. Tuesday and Wednesday night could be challenging with south winds, which could reach up to 50 kilometers an hour in terms of gusting. Now, teams there again have taken huge steps to prepare, from building out dozer guards in priority areas to basically that's digging away forest with heavy equipment like bulldozers, to setting up a huge network of sprinklers in the community, to hitting that fire from the air with helicopters and air tankers, to hot spotting around Patterson and Paradise, to working to get heavy equipment over to Kikiza, the Kikiza side of the fire, to do some tight lining on the perimeters there, to help bring that bring that to a better level of containment. They've all been doing hard work on the ground to prepare, and they're going to continue to stand tall and do that good work tomorrow and keep each other safe. Moving to the North Slave now, and we've had some good days here on the Becheco Yellowknife fire and the North Slave complex more broadly. The fire remains about 15 kilometers at its nearest point to the northwest of the Yellowknife city boundaries. We believe that it's highly unlikely to reach the outskirts of Yellowknife over the next 3 days, because we've done some good work and held that fire at bay with aerial support, and that bought us time to get to some help from weather for the first time. One of very few times that kind of helped throughout this relentless summer. So rain over the past 72 hours has opened new opportunities for us as we manage this fire. We're going to be moving to a direct attack approach on the perimeter of that fire. So putting boots on the ground right on the perimeter of this huge fire. Now, of course, we got about 4 millimeters of rain in that fire's area yesterday, and that did damper fire activity a bit today, though we did see fire pop up and be visible beyond the ground there in this deep burning fire. We've got about 40 kilometers plus of very hot line to deal with. And of course, as conditions continue to dry out, we will see fire activity increase again. So more than 40 kilometers of line to work with there. We're in the process right now of assessing just how long that could take and just what level of work we need to get done on that to mitigate fire risk for the capital. I know it's frustrating for folks who are watching from afar to not know exactly how long that work might take, but I assure you we're going to communicate where we're sitting as soon as we're able to assess that work from the ground and get a clear idea of what the path forward looks like. I need to acknowledge the fact that there's uncertainty in all of this. When you're dealing with fire, you're at the whims of the weather. Things can change fast. Things can become more challenging really fast. And again, we may have to, adjust our tactics as we have had to several times throughout the management of this fire. But in terms of our work, we're dedicated to getting things done as quickly as possible as we desperately work to get all you folks home safe. I want to make a comment about rain. We've heard a lot of comments about rain and the potential impact that should have on the safe return. So we got some analysis done to look at, based on the conditions out there, what level of rain we would need to get, basically to put that fire at bay over the longer term. And with the drought conditions that we're facing there, our fire behavior analyst determined that it would take about 60 millimeters of rain over a 10-day period on this fire to bring levels of moisture in the small, fine forest fuels like dry leaves, etc., on the forest floor back to a normal level, given that drought. For context, we've received about 10 to 11 millimeters of rain over the past few days. And that's far from enough to prevent risk to Yellowknife at this time. We've got very little in the long-term forecast and warming temperatures. So again, There's a lot of work ahead on this, and we're dedicated to getting that done. For the folks on the Ingram Trail there, we received less rain on the Ingram Trail fire, only about 1 millimeter at the closest weather station yesterday, while the other fire received about 4. That fire's been our most active over the past few days, with significant amount of hot areas along the southern perimeter there. We've got a good team working up there to protect things folks value up there, their cabins, their homes, and other things they care about, and to contain that fire from moving towards our established control lines there, from which we've completed some ignition operations. That work's going to continue going forward. And I want to remind the folks from N.W.T who are watching from afar here that we haven't forgotten about the fire over there. 29 kilometers to the southeast is still about where that fire sits. That fire did get some significant rain the other day, overnight yesterday, about 10 millimeters, and that's kept that fire at bay today as well. We are continuing to look at options and monitoring that work, and have a plan to complete ignition operations to prevent northward and westward growth of that fire should the time come. So we're managing all of these fires aggressively. Now, as I close out for the day, I just want, a message to everybody, our friends, our family, everybody who's watching from afar. There are thousands of people up here, including essential workers, private contractors, and the folks in the emergency management and firefighting efforts, working desperately every single day to get you home and to get you home safe with the things you care about intact and ready for you to return. And of course, as we say that, we need to acknowledge those who have already experienced significant loss. And of course, I speak to the folks of Enterprise who are watching this. Our hearts go out to you. We've been doing work in that area to make sure you have a safe place to return to and work to rebuild, and we'll be with you every step of the way. That concludes my update tonight.
Thanks very much, Mike Westwick, and thank you, Jennifer Young. We will now move on to the media QA portion of the conference, starting with Northern Media, of course. So Emily Blake, Cabin Radio. Do you have a question?
Hi, yes, sorry, I was just unmuting myself there. I have a question. We got an inquiry from someone who's at the hotel in Leduc, and they said the hotel doesn't seem to be aware that evacuee supports are going to be extended and are asking them to leave the hotel. Is there any advice on that?
Sure. Jennifer, can you take this one?
Yeah, for sure. Originally, we had a specific timeline that was in place with evacuation centers, but I have been informed that all of those have been extended and there is no deadline at this time.
Do you have a follow-up, Emily?
Yeah, I guess I'm just wondering what this person should do.
Jennifer?
Yeah, so the individual could reach out to the specific evacuation center to discuss that, and if there's concerns or perhaps a misunderstanding or miscommunication, that the evacuation center could reach out to the Territorial Emergency Management Organization to get further information and clarification.
Just one other question. My understanding is the Leduc Evacuation Center is closed.
Yep, Jennifer?
I don't have that information on my fingertips, but we do have updated information. We linked directly to the government of Alberta, and they have excellent up-to-date information in terms of which evacuation center is currently open or not.
Okay, thanks, Emily. All right, moving along to Carly at APTN and N.W.T. Go ahead, Carly. Carly, are you there? What about Sarah at APTN? Okay, anyone from CBC North? I did get a RSVP from Juanita and Peter.
I'm here too. It's Luke.
Hi, Luke.
Hey, I guess this question would be for Jennifer as well. I'm just wondering if the territory is gonna do anything, offer any financial supports to help people pay for their accommodations as this evacuation stretches on.
Go ahead, Jennifer.
So if the N.W.T through the Emergency Management Organization supported you in your evacuation, those same supports will be available to you to re-enter into the N.W.T when it's safe to do so. If you self-evacuated on your own means, the expectation will be that you re-enter under your own means as well. And just as a reminder, everyone should be checking their insurance policies because most of the time they do have clauses in there related to emergencies and evacuations related to natural disasters.
Luke, do you have a follow-up?
Okay, so yeah, it sounds like there won't be any additional supports for people staying in hotels if you're not at a territory, a GNWT evacuation center. Is that the case?
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you. All right, Eric at NNSL. Eric, are you there?
Hi.
Hi.
I am. Can you hear me?
Yep, all good.
I'll take that as a yes. All right. So we saw a letter that was sent out from the GNWT to employees today, just basically kind of asking people to check in and make sure that they're okay and so forth. But there was one thing mentioned about that. And apparently, people who are able to access a computer and internet should contact their supervisor about working remotely for 2 weeks beginning Monday, August 21st, 2023. So my question is, wouldn't that imply that there is at least a scenario being looked at here where the evacuation is still underway in 2 weeks? And should the people who are currently in evacuation centers or living out of hotels or trying to budget their $750, what should they be planning for, like 2-3 weeks on the road at this point, realistically?
Okay, so similar to yesterday, your question is about the timing of the evacuation. So I'm going to throw this to Jennifer.
Thanks, Aggie. Again, the timing on the evacuation does relate on it being safe to return. So once we get information from ECC, the Department of Environment and Climate Change, that it's safe to return and the fires are controlled, then we will look at re-entry. But I do believe some of the line of questioning there was around financial supports and some messaging that potentially went out to some employees. So I think Bill might be able to answer some of that information as well, Aggie.
Sure. William McKay, Deputy Minister from Finance, go ahead.
Thank you, Aggie. Thanks, Jennifer. So you're correct. There was messaging that went out earlier today that mentioned 2 weeks, but we've actually since corrected that to say that you'd be working remotely until it was safe to return to your community. So we didn't have any insight when that was put into the messaging. We have a what we call an out of territory remote work policy, and that allows for remote work for up to 2 weeks. So that's the only reason that wording was in there. But we have changed that since, and it's tied directly to the evacuation order. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
Yeah.
Do you have a follow-up? Oh, Mike Westwick, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to add that in terms of wildfire situations, it's important to remember, as we ask general questions here, that every situation, every wildfire is going to be different. Again, driven by weather, which then drives fire activity. So it's impossible to generalize in terms of how long these evacuations may last. What I can say is that there remains imminent threat. There remains significant threat, rather, I suppose, across all the communities which are evacuated as a result of these wildfire situations. And we're working to influence that influence the destiny on that front, so to speak, as much as we possibly can here.
Thank you, Mike. Luke or Eric, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I know you guys are getting sick of me asking this, but you guys have, I'm guessing there's got to be some sort of scenarios in place of, like, if rain falls falls this much, we do this. If rain doesn't fall this much, we do this. People are, trying to figure out what they're going to do here for the next few weeks.
What's your question?
And it's like if
I think I understand his
people
question,
are gonna be
Aggie,
on
and
the
I'll,
road for weeks, probably good for them to at least
hold on,
expect
Mike.
that, and
Sorry,
Oh,
Eric,
sure.
we cut you off. Can you repeat your question, please?
just, will people be, called to offend? I mean, we're not going to be out of this in 5 days here, it seems like. So, I mean, should people be making sort of plans for a couple weeks, and then, if at least when if the situation improves, you get a miracle or something, biblical rain of some sort, it's better and people can come out. So should people be preparing for like a couple weeks on the road here is basically what I'm asking.
Okay, Mike, go ahead.
So, in terms of scenarios, of course, again, it's all driven by weather to a degree in terms of the wildfire activity. What I would say is like we're not looking at a few days of work. We're looking at more in the context of weeks. That's generally the message that I would give. And again, like you say, that can change. That can change both due to weather, and it can change due to success on the wildfire fighting front, and it can change, based on risk assessments by communities as well. I did want to note that it's not a requirement for a fire to be quote unquote under control, as we might define it, in order for risk to be mitigated enough for a community, rather, not a computer, to return. In terms of to give an example on the Beshico Yellowknife fire here, ZF015, the fact that we can move to direct attack, the fact that we're moving forward with that is a really good step in terms of beginning to make progress towards mitigating that risk. The fact that we're able to use that tool, which we hadn't been able to use for some time due to that fire's intensity, is good. It provides an opportunity for us to potentially shorten that timeline, give us another tool to do so, in addition to things like ignition operations and the like, which would still be considered. But the reality is that all of these things take a massive effort, a massive amount of work from a massive amount of people to make the kind of progress, to mitigate that kind of risk, absent assistance from weather. That's just the reality. The force that we're dealing with is extremely powerful. That is fire in the environment, in the boreal forest, where fire wants to exist, and we're trying to push back against that, and that's tough. That's tough because that fire wants to be there. We're doing everything we can to make the timeline as short as possible. Given weather conditions, given the tools that we have in our toolbox, we're making progress every day, but it's a lot of work ahead.
Thank you, Mike. All right, moving along to Juanita Taylor at CBC North. Juanita?
Hi, good evening. Just quickly wanted to thank everybody on the call for making time to answer our questions. I know you guys are super busy every minute of the day, and if not, you are getting some downtime. So thanks for the opportunity to give us some information for our jobs. My first question is about of course, there are some non-Yellowknife residents who were evacuated, those people who were visiting Yellowknife at the time. I know particularly of 3 people from Nunavut who were in Yellowknife at the time and had to leave on the evacuation planes as per the order. So now they are at these evacuation centers, but are unable to get home to their communities in Nunavut that do not have an evacuation order. How can the government of the Northwest Territories help those people get home, or should they be looking to their respective government in trying to get home?
Jennifer?
What I would say to that, Juanita, is if we supported them in evacuating out of Yellowknife on resources that the Emergency Management Organization provided, then we would do the same to return them to Yellowknife, and then suggest that however they came from Nunavut to Yellowknife, they would use that same means of getting back to Nunavut from Yellowknife.
Do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, just wondering, like, if this is going to take them 2 weeks, does that make sense to keep them in an evacuation center for 2 weeks if they have a safe home to get to? This, of course, is disrupting their families and their lives as well.
Jennifer?
Yeah, by all means, no, we're not suggesting that they have to stay at the evacuation center, you know, for the duration of the evacuation. If they have a means to go back to Nunavut, then by all means, then they should exercise that ability to get back to their home communities.
Thank you. All right, Ian at CKLB.
Yes, hi. My first question is for the Deputy Minister of ECE. We got a message earlier today just saying that despite the uncertainty around the beginning of the school year, that remote learning is not being considered as an option at this point. I'm just curious why it's not being considered.
Sure. John McDonald, go ahead.
Thanks. So remote learning is not being considered at this time because the circumstances are vastly different from when we were all dealing with COVID. So in this instance, parents, families in general, as well as school employees, like teachers, are in communities across the country. And in some instances, some are working or living in campsites, hotels, and in complex situations, many of which do not have computer hardware or internet access. So virtual learning is not a feasible solution at this time. So really, from an education perspective, the path forward will really be dependent upon the emergency response and the timing for when each individual community can return and ask its residents to return. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Ian, do you have a follow-up? Ian?
Sorry, yes. I believe this this question is for Corporal Matt Halstead, and apologies, this might be a detail I missed earlier on, but we heard a message directed at people who might consider returning to Yellowknife at this point in time. I'm just curious, is this something we've seen a lot of people trying to return, and if so, what is done in those cases?
Corporal?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So the RCMP are not actually manning the roadblocks that are in position to kind of decide who comes in and out of the territory. If there were issues with that and we would receive calls for service, we could certainly be contacted. But unfortunately, I don't have any information about that. And I think that the Department of Infrastructure is actually managing that situation.
And we have Jeffrey on the line from the Department of Infrastructure. Jeffrey, can you jump in?
Sorry, I apologize again. Try again one more time.
Ian, can you ask your question one more time?
Sure. I'm just curious, have we seen a lot of people trying to return to Yellowknife, and what is done in those cases, if so?
Okay, so no, there hasn't been a whole lot. We have a roadblock, and if you're driving toward Yellowknife, you're going to be stopped at the roadblock, and the only people allowed past are essential workers, anybody that passes the litmus test and is required in the community. We have a company came in from Edmonton, and they are manning our roadblock for us, and the city of Yellowknife is closed for all intents and purposes.
Thanks, Jeffrey. All right, I will now move it along to Claudienne at Radio Canada.
Yes, hi. Just want to confirm before I get my question in that if there is anybody French speaking amongst the panelists.
Panelists, can you raise your hand if there is a French speaker? I don't think there is, Claudienne.
Okay. Okay, my first question would be then in regards to kids that were in foster care or group homes. How were they evacuated, and what kind of tracking system was established to make sure we know where they are, or that the families of these kids are able to know where their own kids are?
Sure. This one would go to Kimberly, I believe. Kimberly? And if I'm wrong, please lead me to the appropriate person.
Sorry, we're talking about children under the care of Child and Family Services.
Correct, yes.
Okay, so So yeah, our Child and Family Services staff have been in touch very frequently with our foster caregivers and have been providing information and supports along the way. That would include, you know, obviously working with birth families as well.
Do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, well, I think I'm going to try maybe through a different avenue to get more details on that particular question. I'd like to know, though, if there has been a lot of, or what kind of discussions there has been with the Indigenous or the First Nations affected by the evacuations. What kind of discussion were there in terms of support of manpower to make sure that they were able to offer services to their own members? Was there any discussions prior to declaring the evacuations with various First Nation governments?
Sure. Jennifer, go ahead.
The territorial state of emergency authority rests with the Minister of Municipal and Community Affairs, with advice provided by the Emergency Management Organization. Is very much based on a risk-based analysis to determine the need to declare that territorial state of emergency. So that authority rests within the Department of Municipal and Community Affairs.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to turn now to the chat here because there's a question from Edge North from Brett. So this one's for Mike Westwick. With the difficulties in predicting wildfires due to unpredictable winds and weather, what is the GNWT's wish list in terms of additional data resources? And in general, do you have any thoughts on immediate and long-term actions that could be taken to improve wildfire predictions?
This is a good question, Brett. You know, the wildfire predictions is an art and a science. Of course, we use a mixture of high tech and low tech currently. We use things like infrared scanners. We use, you know, we got to use our weather forecasts, and you got to go do some analysis on the ground. It's never going to be a perfect science, but we have qualified people. We have a vast intelligence dashboard that we use to make wildfire decisions and aid our decision-making tools. And of course, you know, currently we're developing, you know, improvements to that, constantly developing improvements that, you know, I think that the information and the information infrastructure side of things on our wildfire side is probably one of the biggest unsung heroes in the whole response. So in terms of wish lists, you know, there's, you know, we're always just going to be looking for the next biggest, best thing, and we're always looking into the next biggest, best thing that can help out with everything. But again, honestly, in terms of you know, in terms of predicting weather, there's a lot of huge organizations using cutting edge technology that constantly get weather forecasts wrong, because that's just the way it goes. It's nature, and she moves how she wishes. So it's never going to be perfect. But we use all the best tools at our disposal, and are, you know, using industry standard, you know, modeling tools to make our decisions, and to give recommendations to folks, and to communicate about, you know, where wildfires are going, or where we expect wildfires to go, rather. And yeah, we'll continue to do so.
Thanks, Mike. Brett, do you have a follow-up? Okay, I will take the silence as a no, and I'm going to move it now to Southern Media. So Media, if you have a question, please raise your hand and I will get to you. So first here we have Carrie Tate. Hi, Carrie.
Hi, good afternoon. Thanks for taking questions again. Mine is directed, I think, more at the folks in government. I'm wondering why there is a reluctance to give people any sort of something to kind of wrap their brain around on how long people will be evacuated for. I understand that this is fluid and you can't put dates on this. I'm not asking for that. But what we have seen in evacuations in the past, whether it's Fort McMurray, a major one like that, or smaller ones, even like Edson this year in Alberta, these are in terms of weeks, not days. And we're not hearing that at all from the government. And I'm wondering why there is that reluctance to give people that information that would help them to mentally prepare for what's ahead?
Sure.
Carrie, yeah, I'll take that one to start. I think I just said that we're looking in terms of weeks here, in terms of mitigating wildfire risk on that front, Carrie. And I think that our minister has said the same several times in conversations with media and the like. There's no doubt there's a lot of hard work ahead. And of course, we recognize the deep anxieties that exist right now, and the need to mentally prepare. It's certainly on all of our all responders' minds here.
So can I just clarify there, Mike? I want to make sure that I understand when you're speaking as a wildland information officer and you are talking weeks, can people listening take that to mean that they will be likely removed from the community for weeks? I understand you have weeks of work to do. I'm wondering if that means that people should prepare for weeks to be removed from the communities.
Yeah, again, I can speak to wildfire threat, mitigating wildfire threat. It's not weeks to finish the work on these fires. We're taking, we're looking at a period of weeks in terms of mitigating wildfire threat, and you know that's where we're at. And you know, I've made a commitment on this conference that we're going to communicate about, you know, more about. You know, how long we think it might take and what kind of triggers that might exist in terms of when an appropriate amount of wildfire threat is you know, mitigated to alleviate threat to these communities. Of course, there are many other considerations in returning an evacuated community that community governments and emergency managers need to consider. But certainly, from the government's perspective here, in terms of wildfire management, that's what I can say, and that's what our commitment is, and we'll be communicating with everybody throughout.
Thanks, Mike. All right, we have Basiru on the line with your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, hello. I was listening to Mayor Rebecca Alti, who said that I think around 1,600 are still in Yellowknife. I don't know. I want to know what is the situation now. How many people are still there?
Sure, I'll throw this to Jennifer.
The number remains relatively the same, currently at about 1,600-ish population left in Yellowknife.
Do you have a follow-up?
And what those people are waiting for? Do you have an idea why they don't want to leave?
I have a feeling that you'll have to ask them, but I'll throw to Jennifer here.
It's a good point, Aggie. So the majority, we think that about 1,000 of them are actually essential workers, or workers like fighting the wildfires themselves, or workers supporting the wildfires, or workers that are here within the emergency management organization. So that covers about 1,000 people, we estimate. Again, that's just estimates. And the remainder of the people, they'd have to answer that themselves. It's a personal choice that they're making to not leave at this time.
Yeah. Thanks, Jennifer. Do we have any more questions? And N.W.T Media, you can throw your hands in here as well. We'll just open it up fully. Juanita Taylor, go ahead. Juanita? Okay, maybe you're muted.
Hi, sorry. I'm so sorry about that. I am here. Apologies about that. Questions about arson. You know, we saw sporadic information of arson attempts. Can you outline when and where, how many, and any developments in their ongoing investigations?
Corporal?
Yeah, so we had a total of 4 arsons that were reported since the beginning of the evacuation. We arrested some youths for 1. We believe that that arson was unrelated to the other 3. I'm not able to provide linkages to the other 3 specifically, other than to say there's a good chance that it's the same person or persons responsible. Those investigations are ongoing. Obviously, we are, our population is evacuated, so the number of potential witnesses is greatly reduced. during that, but we did collect some evidence that we can process forensically, and we continue to investigate. And as soon as I have an update, we'll provide that. And I can also say that for the last 2 nights, we've had officers out on fire watch as part of the regular patrols. We've had ATV patrols, bike patrols in areas that are not easily accessible by the road, and we have not come across any additional fires. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Luke, go ahead.
Just following up on the foster care situation, I'm just wondering, can the territorial government confirm that every child that is in foster care has been put in touch with their biological parents?
Kim, can I throw this one to you?
You can. I'm not able to confirm that, but we can certainly provide you with a follow-up if you'd like.
That would be great. Thank you.
Thanks, Luke. Emily at Cabin Radio.
Yes, I know that Minister Thompson isn't on the call tonight, but I think on Saturday he said that Air Tindy was still going to be flying goods into fly-in only communities, including Litzel K, and we've heard something different. Any sort of clarification or response to that would be appreciated.
Sure. Jennifer?
I don't know about the specific airline. I know that we are working on options to assure that there's food supply into appropriate communities. As in terms of the actual specific airlines that are doing that work, I don't have that information at the top of my hands here.
Sure. Jeff, can you speak a little to the food supply topic from infrastructure?
Sure. The only thing that I can add, like Jennifer, I don't know the specifics for airlines, but I do know that the Yellowknife Airport is open for flights like this. It's not open for general commercial aviation, but it is definitely open for any flights for the humanitarian side of it, medevacs type thing. So the food, there's no reason why the food would not be going to these communities if we were talking about using Yellowknife as the airport.
Thanks, Jeff. Eric, go ahead.
That kind of segues right into my question. So there's a number of people up here who, normally when they fly down to, say, Edmonton or wherever, they stop off in Norman Wells and then they fly to Yellowknife. So I'm wondering, how are flights, like non-essential flights, for people being handled right now, considering Yellowknife Airport is kind of busy with the emergency response?
Jeffrey, can I throw to you?
Sure can. So thank you for the question. Basically, Yellowknife is closed for commercial aviation. So I'll talk about Canadian North, for example. They flew in here today. They just amended their schedule to go from Edmonton directly Norman Wells to Nunavik, not necessarily in that order, but they've just amended the commercial side of their operation to exclude Yellowknife right now because it is closed for commercial aviation. There's no reason for people to be going into Yellowknife except for emergency or essential type personnel. And they're going to be going in on different flights. We have flights set up for that. And there's nobody should be leaving on these commercial flights because they should all be evacuated. So the whole Yellowknife is just basically out of the Canadian North and any other operators flight right now. They're just bypassing Yellowknife.
Thanks, Jeffrey. Carrie Tate, go ahead.
Hi, thanks again. This is related to something you guys talked about earlier, where you talked about only the people who went out with government, I think you meant on the evacuation flights, would be assisted coming back. I'm just curious, there was a big push to have people leave by the highway. I think probably a lot of people carpooled, went south, and people might be fanning out, and their way that they got down may not be available to them to get back up. Are you saying that if they were not on the flights, there's no way for them to access a flight back?
Jennifer?
I don't know that we have that re-entry portion specifically planned out at this time. So when we have further details, I'll be able to answer that question on the re-entry portion.
Thanks, Jennifer. Juanita at CBC, go ahead.
Hi there. So question for Canadian North, I'm sure. So these stops to Yellowknife to get to, especially N.W.T communities of Nunavut, this is not just for patients or for people, of course, but it also is for supplies, for food, milk, groceries, things like that. So does this stop the delivery of goods into Nunavut communities if they can't stop in Yellowknife first?
Jeffrey, can you speak to this one?
Yeah, I sure can. Thanks for the question. And no, if like right now, for example, like I said, Canadian North came to Norman Wells today. I watched the flight land here. So they're just bypassing Yellowknife. So any of the food, any of the medicines, anything that's required to come in, if it's going to come in onto Canadian North, then they'll just come from Edmonton. Same thing going into Nunavut. It will, the originating airport will just bypass Yellowknife and go direct to the, you know, whichever community it is in the Northwest Territories and or Nunavut.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Emily Blake, Cabin Radio.
Yeah, I had a question. It was said earlier in the press conference that people that self-evacuated are, I guess, on their own when it comes to coming back to the community. I'm guessing what that means in terms of support for people that carpooled or hitched rides like they were encouraged to do.
Yep. Jennifer?
Yeah, if that remains an option for people to do that, then we would encourage that. But as I said earlier in my response, we're still working through the details of the reentry plan, and once we have more details, we'll be able to share them.
Thanks, Jennifer. Luke at CBC.
Sorry, is the premier on this?
No.
Okay. Disregard.
Oh, okie doke. Juanita.
Hi, thanks again. This question is probably for Mike. Is there a risk of the two fires north of Yellowknife joining at one large fire, you know, as winds typically shift to come out of the north as fall approaches? What do these northern fires pose to Yellowknife? Could we be in the same situation with those fires into the fall as we are right now with the others?
Mike?
The northern fires. Can you be more specific, Juanita?
Oh, yeah, sorry about that. Let me just simmer that down a little bit. Is there a risk of the two fires north of Yellowknife joining to become one large fire?
Yeah, of course there's a risk of that. Again, fires driven by weather. But you know, in reality, at this point, we're managing these fires as one, as a complex there. I want to note that it'd be highly unlikely for ZF085, the one, the Deta fire that we're managing there. It'd be highly unlikely for that to join. And ZF012 and ZF011 would be the most likely to join at some point. But again, it comes down to the weather. But in terms of managing these things, we wouldn't be doing anything differently if they managed to join up at a certain point. It's all about doing everything you can to move that fire, to herd it away from things that you don't want it to go near, things like communities, property, etc. Excuse me. And yeah, we wouldn't be managing them all that differently, even if they did join.
All right, Juanita, I see your hand is up again. So how about you follow up, and then I'll go to Eric, and then I'll close the conference today.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm in Port Providence tonight, where about an hour and a half ago, I saw a number of semi-trucks with emergency vehicles on them, fire trucks, ambulances from Edmonton en route to Yellowknife. Can you talk about, I guess, the call for more vehicles to come in and help should this fire get closer to Yellowknife?
Well, I can speak from the wildfire services perspective here. I mean, we've got reinforcements in from all over the country, places like Ontario, New Brunswick, etc. And you know, we've had equipment coming in from other parts of the territory as well. But I believe actually that the specific vehicles that you're speaking about are ones that have been imported by the city of Yellowknife as part of the shared plan to protect this place. So I'm going to pass it over to Sheila Bassey-Kellett.
Sheila?
Thanks very much, Mike. Thanks very much, and thanks for the question, Juanita. That's absolutely right. So Yellowknife Fire Division has been undertaking a ton of work on pre-planning, but we're really, really honored by all of the support that's coming from across the country. So we have about 80 firefighters that are here with us on the ground. They've come to us from Whitehorse, Edmonton, Fort McMurray, and many other Alberta locations as well. We have equipment that's come to us from Edmonton, Fort McMurray. We have things have come from Toronto. What you'll see in Fort Providence, what's en route to us right now, is a series of equipment that has come to us from the city of Edmonton. They, of course, have been such great partners to us, doing so much work to support not only our evacuees on the ground there, but they are constantly in touch with us about what we need, what kind of support they can bring. And they are coming, of course, with this equipment to supplement what our fire department has, so that in the event that the fire comes into Yellowknife and we are seeing the need to protect the western flank of our community or the northern flank, that our firefighters are ready, they've got all the equipment they possibly need, and they are supplemented with colleagues from across the country. Thanks.
Thank you, Sheila. All right, moving on to the last question now for the night. Eric, go ahead.
This following up, this is probably for Mr. McKay. I'm just curious, I mean, obviously this is the early days of this, but does the N.W.T have any idea roughly like how much of its public service is going to be able to work remotely, and how do they have any sort of timeline on how soon services will be restored to some extent?
Thanks, Eric. Bill?
Yeah, thank you for the question. We don't have an idea of how many people are. We're still gathering that data as to how many people are, because different managers are contacting their employees to find out who's able to work remotely. So some people do have GN equipment with them. Others have access to equipment that they can access webmail and that sort of thing. And then others are able to do work. They have type of jobs that maybe they don't necessarily have to be online. They can do other projects while they're waiting to go back to the community. So the managers are sort of doing it on a case-by-case basis. We don't know how many employees are able to be fully employed right now. So at the moment, we are encouraging everybody to do as much remote work or other work that they can, but also encouraging managers to be flexible in terms of letting employees settle into wherever they are and make provisions for a bit of a stay outside of the territory. But just to get back to the specific question, we don't have an idea of how many people are actually working remotely right now. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Bill. Thank you to our panel, and thank you to media for all your questions. And media, if you do have further questions, please reach out to the appropriate department. And if you have a question for a minister or for the premier, please reach out to press secretary at press.secretary@gov.nt.ca. We will do this again tomorrow at 7 p.m. and I will be sending out a media advisory. That said, we are still experiencing technical difficulties with our media distribution lists in Outlook. So if you don't receive anything by 2 o'clock, please send press secretary or myself an email, and I will make sure to send that link to you. Thanks very much. Take care.